I'm here to refute the claim that my opponent stated, which is that private prisons treat their inmates and their faculty in an inhumane manner. The claims that they use to back this up are that private prisons are a free-for-all environment, institutions want to have low costs of operation, and that there's obliviousness on oversight. So in their first point, that it's a free-for-all environment in private prisons, I found a little bit of an issue in their evidence, because my opponent claims to cite a video from the New York Times of inmates attacking each other, but where he really got this video is unknown because it's not actually cited anywhere in his paper, and we can only assume what happened in the video because he doesn't really go into detail about it, so we don't really know the whole story of this video. Another thing is in his reasoning where he tries to start off with trying to appeal to our emotions, and it doesn't really help his claim because it has no relation to the original claim in the first place. So he talks about people attacking each other, guards trying to protect themselves, and in a way it's more like explaining not what the prisons are doing to them, but what they're doing to each other. So it really has no connection back to his claims that this private prison system is treating them unfairly. The second claim that they made were that they wanted to maintain the low costs of operation. So a counter to this is that when my opponent is explaining his concerns for those neglected healthcare inmates, however, according to Jeffrey Keller in the article Who Gets the Best Healthcare in America, Prisoners, inmates are the only residents of the United States with a constitutional guarantee of medical care. Inmates don't have to do anything to be eligible for medical benefits. So this really contrasts the rest of the country where a lot of people are struggling just to get health care. And when inmates receive it for free, a lot of money goes into that. So I'm sure if they were really trying to not pay as much, they wouldn't give them that free health care that's not even available to other people that aren't incarcerated in prison. Another counter is that my opponent starts talking about the issue of prisons attempting to save the money and not accurately treating their guards with respect or giving them a fair salary. This can be disputed though by looking at the benefits of working as a correctional officer by Dr. Mary Dowd, which actually states that in addition to making more than the national average income, correctional officer benefits can include medical and dental insurance, retirement plans, overtime and shift differential pay, and paid military leave. So this income, they're already higher than the national average, and he failed to mention all these benefits that a correctional officer may receive. And his reports about their salary is a little bit off because it depends on where you work. You can make less, you can make more, but most of them do make more, and it's a good, decent salary. His last point was the oblivious on oversight. I wanted to talk about his evidence at this point that the majority of it, I counted about 6 out of the 10 things he cited or quoted, all came from the exact same person, is Timothy Williams. And it gives it more of a very narrow and one-sided perspective. And this would be okay if he was talking about Timothy Williams' experience. However, we're trying to get a greater look at the prison systems and trying to really understand how they're treating their faculty and inmates unfairly. But we can't really get a good look when we're just focusing on over half of his evidence is from this one person. And then some reasoning issues. He seems to end his argument by avoiding the issue, again, similar to how he did in the beginning. So he tries to stress that guards are ignoring the inmates to avoid any conflict. And while this can associate to the obliviousness, again, it really doesn't go back to his original claim that these private prisons are treating people unfairly. He just talks about, again, they're interacting with each other and not cooperating correctly, but it has nothing to do with the prison system on them directly. Thank you.
I did use that, so All right, well, the structural stuff is fine. On the first point, you challenged the evidence because the video is not part of the New York Times article, and we don't really know exactly what goes on. That's a reasonable press to make on this particular point. Your suggestion that there's some emotional element that's involved there that makes it unrelated to the claim, I'm not exactly sure why you believe that is the case. I think that needed to be clarified a little bit more. And the question is, I think you've got a good point here. You need to explain it a little bit more. All the evidence does is demonstrate what goes on there. It doesn't demonstrate that it goes on because they are there. That's kind of the claim that I think that you're getting to. The notion that things occur in a particular place doesn't necessarily mean that they are caused by being in that particular place. That could be a coincidence. And when you're talking about people who are guilty of crimes, guess what? They might engage in antisocial behavior with one another. The question might be whether it is substantially different from what goes on in public prisons or those administered by the states or localities. I think that there would be a good press here if you could have some evidence, or if there's an absence of evidence that they provided. I don't remember. The only evidence that you talk about is the video evidence there. On the second point, on the cost issue, I do think that you have an interesting contradiction that you're pointing out here. Here we are worried about the cost. It's supposed to be low cost, and we're supposedly ignoring the prisoners there, but they do have the best medical care of all. They have a constitutional right which others do not have, including citizens who are not incarcerated, to health care, and we're obligated to provide them with that kind of assistance and care because of their incarceration, and nobody else can get that kind of access. I think that does show an inconsistency in the way the prisons are being perceived here. And then I did like your information about the guards. There's general information about what their benefits could be and what their potential compensation could be, and I thought you had a pretty good piece of evidence there. On the last point concerning oversight, your criticism is mostly that the evidence all comes from one source. If you could explain what's inadequate about that source, the argument would be stronger. Looking for more diverse information is not a bad idea from the advocate's point of view. I think that would be good that you would have a diversity of sources going on there. But unless I had some reason to suspect that Timothy Williams is not being accurate, or has misled us, or has got a bias in the reports that have been submitted, I'm not sure that that's a very strong response to that particular point. All right, thank you.